Housing Task Force. I'd like to mention that all the members are here. We'd also like to welcome Mayor Eckert and Lieutenant Matt Dyston. And we'd also like to thank Stan Bradski, the mayor accepted his letter of resignation. And we'd like to thank Stan on behalf of the rest of us, because he's a leader in his community, is always gentlemanly, and we thank him for his work. I'd like to have a motion for approval of January 17th minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Maester, second by Ms. Hadley. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. At this time, we'd like to ask the people in the audience if they'd like to speak. We are an active committee, and we do have a couple hours worth of work probably, but we'd appreciate hearing from you if you'd like to say something. We'd appreciate you keeping your conversation down to 2 or 3 minutes. Anybody out there? Yes.
Michael Hager, 701 Centerville. I did read over the proposal, and I was a little dismayed at the overall thing. We're going after all landlords rather than identifying the problem tenants, problem landlords, and working with them. I would have hoped that, mandatory checks, although you may think that that's going to solve the problem, the landlords aren't able to share that information with anybody anyway. So that requiring it just means that they're doing their due diligence now, and just put an extra burden on them. And just want to say that I think that having that removed and keeping the other part of the ordinance is a good starting point, something to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Yeah, Rick Brown. I noticed on the agenda out there, there's going to be 2 times we can comment tonight, beforehand and at the end.
Yes, we do have that.
All right, that's the way to do it. I too have looked over the draft on this. I know this is just a replacement ordinance for one that's already on the books. If you guys just want a little bit more information, I've got a lot more information. I have a real problem with privacy issues on this. I have no problem with the landlord and the tenant entering into a contractual agreement to lease a piece of property. I have a real problem sharing it with the city, and that information can be disseminated to other people. Because it happens a lot around here. Information is given to the city, the next thing you know, it's all over the place. And there's enough information on some of these forms that are listed in here that people can get credit cards in somebody else's name. I have a real problem with it. I don't think it's any of the city's business who is in a piece of property. Maybe they could have the main person, the head of the household, register. But anybody else, that's nobody's business. It really is. And since all this stuff has to be done equally to owner-occupied housing and to rental housing, I have a big problem. It's, there's too many times.
Chairman, this is addressing the occupancy ordinance, not the crime free housing.
Oh, no, the stuff that's in here is, you have to list names, birthdays, things like that. I can take any occupancy, any of the information that's in just the crime-free part of this, and I can find out enough information to get a credit card. Telling you that. And the city does disseminate some of this information out to third parties. I got in my hands right here half a dozen tickets that I got copies of that have people's social security numbers on them, addresses, driver's license numbers, and things like that, that anybody can come up here and get. And it's not a thing that we need to have in this information age, that people can steal someone's identity. A man's home is his castle, and this information just shouldn't. I have a real problem with that. You know, you don't get, if we're trying to make people safe and trying to protect people, you know, Chief said, well, this information will be good to help in criminal investigations. Well, you know, I'm sure that the hospital would maybe find that having the person's blood type might be helpful if there's ever somebody hurt there and they know what kind of blood they have on the individual. Or why not their driver's license? Or why not their social security number? Or why not a lot of stuff? I just have a big problem with this stuff. I mean, this isn't the kind of stuff that America has stood for over the years. I just, it's hard for me to say.
Thank you.
Well, I haven't really had a chance to read all this, I just found out about this really in the time that I heard. But it looks like what you're asking for is, for them to disclose or somehow find out in a criminal record, that's what we're talking about.
It does call for a landlord to do a criminal background check.
Okay, so if we do a criminal background check, and they have a criminal record, isn't it illegal not to rent to them if they have done their time and stuff?
Excuse me, ma'am, there's nothing in the ordinance that dictates to the landlord whom they do or do not rent to. The intent of the background investigation is to make sure that the landlord has all the information available to make a good, sound decision on whether or not the landlord wants that person in their property. You can still rent to whomever you wish, ma'am.
Okay, so I could do that without it being mandated for me to do it. I mean, I already do a sex offender checklist. You can do all that quickly yourself. So if you were going to pass this, why would you, I mean, I don't see why you pass it either, like you were saying. I would know all this stuff about everybody. If it's not already public record, then I should know it. But if you're going to impose it on someone, instead of imposing it on the landlord, when the person comes down to the city to get their occupancy permit, have it done there and have them pay for it, have it done. And then at least, it can be all part of that, instead of putting the burden on us landlords to figure out how to go about doing this.
The idea, ma'am, is so that the landlords have the information available. If they show up for the occupancy permit, you've already committed in a contract to lease to them, and any information that would be in there that you would not have found would not, it would be of no use.
So if they have a criminal record and they did their time, and they qualify in every other way to rent the house.
That's up to you.
It's
It's up
entirely
to you who you
Yeah,
rent
it's up
to.
to you.
What we're saying
But
is,
what I'm saying is, though, the information, if they've already done the time, it's not a discriminator. It's not legal to discriminate against them because they've done time.
I mean, it depends on your policy you have. Yeah, it's
It's not a protected
not a
class.
protected class. If I say I don't want to rent to anyone that has a felony on their record, I have that right.
Even though they went to jail?
Yes.
Even though they served the time and they just got out last week and they've been clean for a whole week, or it's, yeah, that's all up to, it's my business who I rent to. So I can rent to someone with 3 felonies, or I can rent someone with none.
This crime,
We're just trying to make it so that the landlord's educated and knows what they're getting into, and that the applicant knows.
That sounds good. So maybe the applicant should be responsible for
Right.
getting that done through the city.
And we're asking, I've been asking if they can go maybe to the police department for $15, get a quick stamped criminal background check, they can show you, and therefore it doesn't involve any of your time or money. That they actually have to take that initiative, so.
I kind of agree, that's better, but I do kind of agree with what the gentleman said earlier. Are we going to do the same thing for people who buy houses?
This is
Instead of
focused
buying
on rental
houses.
right now.
But I mean, it kind of follows along, it applies to people renting. If you go to buy a house, are you going to do the same thing?
It would be my guess,
Precedent.
it would be my guess that if a lending institution has worked its salt, it does a criminal background check on the individual that's borrowing money. That would be my guess.
don't
I
think
know
they
I
do
wouldn't
that.
lend thousands of dollars to somebody without it.
But I think they check, I don't think they check that. I bought a lot of houses and I've never heard anybody mention that law, there's no fee for it. I don't have a criminal record, but there's no fee for it, I'm sure they would charge if there was, so.
But we're just dealing with rental
Right.
property for now.
I don't know,
Yes.
but if the city's imposing this for rentals, it follows that they would impose it for home ownership as well.
And who
They're
would-
trying to keep back people that have a criminal record out of the city.
Where, it's about if you're a landlord, if you know who you're renting to, and it's a renting
It's
or
on
you want.
to. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
No, I didn't. Your name, ma'am?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the campus. I own three houses that I rent in the city of Belleville, and I live in Belleville myself.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, Bob, did you want to say something before we get started here, or?
No.
Oh, okay. We have received a finalized copy from the attorney. You received an email with redacted portions and stuff, you saw what all was set up. I'd like to go over, because I find it here, a letter from him that kind of explained what he did. First of all, he said there are numerous changes to terms used throughout the ordinance to be consistent with definitions. In addition, I have changed the definition for rental agreement. You notice he changed almost all the time, changed lease to rental. I suppose rental's a wider legal term than lease, I guess, but I did notice that. I proposed a subsection B to 33(3)(7). So if you want to look, 33(3)(7 under. Yes. Be at the bottom of page 3, I believe.
Head on page 4
And on page 4 is the section B. And he included this: an owner who owns only one rental unit and whose tenant is a son, daughter, mother, or father may be excused from the requirements of this Article 3 upon presenting satisfactory proof of the directive. The idea is that we do have some people who own a house and they're just renting to their children until maybe it's grandma's house or something like that. And I had mentioned to him that I'd like to see something to address that, and that's what he chose to put in here. And from my understanding, they wouldn't have to be involved in primary housing at all, because this is all Article 3. And I'd like to see if there's any discussion about that. Does anybody object or anybody support it?
I have no objection.
I think it's something that we have to visit, and if down the road, the out-of-town parents, we have issues, then we have to add it in, but right now, hopefully that would be a minor, small population, no problems.
And I could see that the out of town, I never thought of that.
Because it's a renter living there, it's a family member, it's still a
I
renter.
was always thinking that grandma lived down the street from him, but that doesn't always work, I just picture it. But it could be somebody living in California, who's leaving their kids here,
Right.
renting to their kids here. He also said, I have specified that section 33(3)(8), which I guess is on page 4, applies to the denial of the registration, and then provided that the hearing procedure, which will be specified in section 33(3)(18). Oh, the hearing's in there. And he says, I've also deleted the provisions of the original draft which relate to a pre-deprivation hearing opportunity. Now, this is his words. Quite frankly, I was unable to determine the purposes of the proposed pre-deprivation hearing opportunity. I believe that the language and procedure set forth in 33(3)(8) and 33(3)(18) are sufficient to give anyone an ample opportunity to refer. So I want to look over 33(3)(8) and 18.
I just know today, Ken, I called Captain Gaggage, who's got the Grant City program that has been doing very well. And one of the first things he said to me was, make sure you have a good and I can't say the word hearing. He said, you've got to have that. He said, otherwise things get bogged down in circuit court, things can get their due process, they can be dealt with, and you'll find that problems are solved much more quicker. And that's one of the first things he told me today. We've got to make sure we have. So, and that's basically what he thought did in here. So, yeah. So as long as we still, he's still saying we don't, the attorney doesn't want to have it anymore.
Yeah, he redacted it, right? That. Now, one of the things I liked about designating it is because it was very heavy and burdensome. There's a lot of legal mumbo jumbo myself. But I think I have to go with the attorney if he thinks it's sufficient. But as you say, if we get into it and find out we end up with a lot of things.
We need to follow a crime-free program that's working versus what.
He said that he excluded it because he didn't understand the purpose.
Yes.
So what if we reevaluate the purpose, how we state the purpose?
Yes.
And we can get Grant City's model, he invited me to come down and spend a day there. I can find out how exactly it works.
Well, wasn't that where we got the original?
Yeah, that was where I think a lot of this wording came from.
Was it from the Grant Cities?
I'm pretty sure it was, yes.
Kevin, do you notice Granite City had city court?
Basically, the way you talk, they do. Yeah. And it works really well for them.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, that maybe under that circumstances, that section of their primary housing is better.
He said, the size of city they have, which is much smaller than Belleville, he said it's gonna be impossible for us not to have a city court and have these.
Right now, we're not set up to
Right.
the city
So,
hall aspect. And that could be, I'm not for sure, but I think that could be his thinking,
right.
behind that. Whereas in the case of Granite City, it's more useful to them with the city court.
Well, he said, yeah, we're gonna be dealing about 3 times what he deals with, and we better have that up and running.
I know the city's been talking for some time about the possibility of the city court. It hasn't come to fruition because there are some problems with it. But,
It's not,
go ahead.
it's not out of the question. We investigated it really hard a couple of years ago. Went and visited Granite City and several, Evansville, several places. At the time, city attorneys and the staff felt that it was, that, there were still a lot of hurdles, a lot of questions and concerns. And we backed away from it. It is definitely on our agenda to revisit it sometime within the next months ahead and take a look again and see if we can make it work for us. I do believe, after reading this, that the number of hearings that might pop up, a city court with a hearing officer in place would be a much better way to deal with the first round of this. And so I think it's not out of the question, but I can tell you it wouldn't be ready to go as quick as this ordinance might be ready. So I think that's why we need to talk to Mr. Flynn, but I kind of think that that's probably where he's coming from, the fact that that step isn't in place yet.
So is there an opportunity that we put this back in to the ordinance?
You certainly can, especially once you had city court, and it would be more feasible, step. I think that certainly can be added to the ordinance.
So how do we address the issues that we're looking at?
I think what is outlined in here is that it would be started out, and I have concerns with it myself, but the mayor or his designee, the hearing officer, would hear, just no different than as a liquor commissioner, we have a liquor situation, we call for a hearing. And I hear the case. I think we'd have to see, I think we're gonna have to see this, how busy is this? Maybe we start small and have a hearing officer appointed that we all agree to, and we don't necessarily have city court right off the bat, but if we see that crime-free housing does constitute a lot of possible issues, that maybe we designate a retired judge or somebody here in town somebody who has experience to be the designated hearing officer. I think it's something we have to work through, but I think, there's still some aspects. But Mr. Flynn, and I have not talked with him, he's been gone this week, be back tomorrow. I think what he was saying is that to get it started, it could be treated much like, I guess, the liquor license situation, where if a hearing is called, we have to set the hearing. But unfortunately, I got a feeling it could be more often. I haven't talked to Grant City or other places to find out how often they're used. Did you get that question, or you're going to try to find that out?
Yeah, I can ask him.
Yeah.
Okay. In general, what's the committee's wish? Do you wish to?
I don't want to slow us up, but I think we need to be open to it. And that's the direction we're going to. And that's where the follow-up committee can hopefully help us to see what we have.
I'm wondering if our original provisions in this thing would further support the city court. And so if it becomes burdensome to do it the way we had projected, if that would motivate the city towards putting in a city court, and then we would be prepared to, I'm just worried that if we run this way, it stays this way for a very, very, very long time. Lots of recommendations, but without the establishment of a city court or something along those lines, I don't know that we can get to where we're targeting.
I do believe this ordinance will help encourage the council to look harder at city court. I do believe if the amount of cases that possibly has to be heard will mandate some action, because it will be impossible to, from whoever is mayor, it would be impossible to run hearings constantly with all the other duties. So I can tell you that something will have to be established. It's just going to have to be looked at. But I think what he's saying is, you got to walk before you can run. But in the meantime, I think to answer your question, I think it will move the council, and I think my intentions are now already that we're going to have to get back after the 1st of May, the new fiscal year, and start to really study this again. It's been a couple of years.
Would the committee be open to proposing it without that section, with the idea that it could be added later? What is your wish?
A time frame, like within 6 months, we have a certain.
That we have it in writing.
What do you want to have put in there?
Some type of timeline to where
Timeline.
we are actually working on having this up and running.
Maybe how about if you put in there that we establish a hearing officer? It doesn't mandate the city council to have city court, but if we have a hearing officer for crime-free, multi-crime-free housing, then if you have a hearing officer, it's going to mandate that the city attorney be present at a situation. We'll have a hearing officer present. You're going to bring in court report. So ultimately, if you see this caseload increase, it will also help drive the bus as far as the need for a city court situation. But maybe the best thing to do is just to officially say that we'd like to establish a hearing officer as part of this ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, can we send this back to the lawyer to revise this section to accommodate the mayor's recommendation of a hearing officer being appointed, and how that hearing officer would be appointed, and so on?
I'll be honest with you, I would just personally, to even start it where the mayor hears the cases, I think it's going to be.
And that's what we always want, we usually designate someone, so it's.
Well, I think I would be like any other recommendation. I would recommend to the council a choice of a hearing officer, and the council would vote like any other appointment. And I would look at somebody who had legal experience, possibly there's a retired judge out there, somebody who's slowed down a little bit but has a lot of legal experience, who would be somebody who has experience in training and mediation, and this type of thing, that is good, a good calming person to listen and to be fair and to look at the laws. And I think that would be what we ought to establish, and that's why I say I think to appoint a hearing officer would be a great first step, and I think to include that, city court may well come off of this. it may well compel it. It's just, you know, a couple of years ago when we looked at it, we just couldn't put all the pieces together at the time. And I know at that time, Mr. Sprague and, you know, and particularly Mr. Sprague at that time, just felt we weren't, you know, quite there and we didn't have all the answers, so we backed away from it. I think it's something we gotta look at.
In the meanwhile, though, can we send that back? Is that fair to everybody? To get the city attorney's words on establishing that hearing officer and how that would be done and so on. Could help with that. That would be my recommendation.
Very good. Let's see, there were a couple other things that he changed. For instance, he said, I've also modified the draft to delete the proposed expiration date of 2017. His reasoning is, the fact is that the council always has the authority to repeal an ordinance at any time, and I suggest that having the ordinance specify an expiration date is counterproductive. I could see that. I could also see that, let's say you wanted to stop it before the 2017. You know.
That's a pleasure of the floor.
Sure.
We have worked as a committee very hard to put together something that I think is fair and open across the board, that creates a teaming effect between the city and the enforcement officers and the landlords, that provides something good for the community. Part of that establishes a crime-free committee that meets every 3 or 6 months up at the front. And the intent is to track our progress. The chief of police can tell us right now exactly how many calls in 2012 were related to rental properties. And so we need to be given those statistics so that we can track the progress and make the adjustments as necessary. Certainly by the time that we had put in there, which I think is December 31st of 2017, we should be able to look at this program and say, 2012 was this, 2016 was this, and there's a significant reduction, and therefore it would make sense for the city council to extend it. If there is not that reduction, it becomes a fight with the city to get it to go away. If this does not reduce the crime, statistics-wise across the board, there is no reason whatsoever for this ordinance. And I would prefer, in fact, I cannot support it without the sunset clause in there. Any governmental agency there is, it's easy to get them to kick the can down the road further and extend it. It's impossible to get them to take it away. That's just the nature of a governmental body. We're seeing it in Congress every day as we speak with furloughs and sequestration. You can see it at the state legislature. That's the characteristic of a governmental body. The sunset law needs to be in there, or the sunset clause needs to be in there. Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, personally, I have no problem. Once again, I had not had a chance to talk to Mr. Flynn. I see his point, because his point is, you know, we always have that opportunity, but I think as far as a measuring stick goes, and based on what you're saying, honestly, I do appreciate the hard work all of you done. So I think it's been remarkable. I have no personal problem. I think I can convince him that that's a clause. I understand what he's saying, but I think the 2017 December 31st date is a date that makes good sense as a measuring stick. And I agree with you. If we can't see some significant improvements, then I think we have to ask ourselves, you know, what are we missing or why? But I don't have any heartburn with that, Mr. Alderman Casella. I think that's a reasonable request.
And I know the landlord organization and the landlords I know in Belleville are really counting on that being in this, just so I can, you know, let them know we are serious. We're not just out as a fundraiser. And so it's going to be very nice to keep that in there for the support.
Another thing that was dropped was we had asked for our funds to go into a separate account. In conversation with the mayor recently, we kind of came to a suggestion that twice a year, whenever the committee meets again, or whatever committee it is, it's a doesn't have separate funds for different
And
organizations.
what we said was, we can give a complete breakdown and audit of all the revenues that come in and all the expenses going out for this program. We know that the startup money, we're gonna have to put some things into this to get started. But, you know, it's gonna have to be a little give and take there initially. But I think to designate it solely, we're gonna get down to where it's gonna be very cumbersome with the finance director and everybody. Well, this, you know, I think what we gotta have some faith is that we're gonna operate this thing. The police department's budget, there's gonna be some give and take on housing in the police department. We're not gonna account for every pencil that goes into trying to be housing, but we know that we wanna hire some personnel. We know that, if we get into this hearing officer situation, which I think, you know, is probably gonna be a smart move, you're gonna have to pay some kind of reasonable fee to the hearing officer. That type of thing is gonna be, I'm not saying that this fund has to pay for a full-blown city court. I think if we have a hearing officer that meets once a month or something, you know, 12 times a year, you're gonna have to, you know, afford them their professional time for something. But I think if we give a complete breakdown and Mr. Casilla showed me that they're looking for at least twice a year, this group. And I had no problem with the makeup of this group here, but if I read the criteria I read today, or the other day, there's some criteria you have in there who should be on this committee. You know, so we would make that appointment. Certainly be some of you, it might not be to meet the standards that you had written, it might not be everybody in here, but it might be a few additional people. But I think that group, they need to be approved by the council, and they would meet at least twice a year, I think I read. But at that time, complete financial reports would be given, along with the statistics that are documented by the police department and housing, and they would have a chance to review the progress at least twice a year. And you know, hopefully that would, you know, and like I said, we're going to, there'll be nothing hidden, nothing anything else. It's just, I think, the finance director and we all agreed to have a separate fund, and then all of a sudden you're gonna get down to, well, there's not enough, then you get down to, what if there's not enough money in there until the revenues come in, or if there's a slow time of year when you're, you know, so I think we just wanna, if the council takes this on, we're gonna take an step to do it. But I can tell you, the finance stuff will make a difference for hiring an extra officer, getting Bob some of the extra support staff he may need to make this work, et cetera. And so we'll be able to show that and justify. And if we find out we have a little extra, then we can look at that second officer right away, et cetera. But I think, and the chief's willing, if he passes, even though we might not have, you know, once we pick a startup date, he's got an idea about how to get something going with staffing, even, you know, a little bit more quickly. So I think there's going to be some give and take. But we just want to guarantee you that, I will guarantee you that there will be full accountability of every dime that's collected versus every dime that's spent.
Mr. Sable, Mr. Sable, you'd be able to, there wouldn't be a problem with telling us how many renters there are. I mean, that would be in the financial report. It wouldn't be mixed in with everything else. So
No, it'd be
we'd be able to see what exactly.
That's okay. My concern with that, Mr. Mayor, is I take you for your word here. I can't take the next mayor for his word, because I don't know who it is.
I think we put it in the ordinance. I think
That's what I want, is in the
No,
ordinance.
I think we put the specifics about the financial reporting in the ordinance.
Well,
I think you write it in there.
it needs to be in there in some capacity, because, you know, initially, you know, this program could be implemented without incurring the cost. It would not do everything we want it to do. The cost that we have recommended, and certainly your two landlords here have supported and fought pretty hard for, is $25 per unit per year fee to support this. Specifically, we would like a couple of officers and administrative personnel to help us in a teaming effort, that when we have issues at the properties, that it's not just us going up there saying you have to change your behavior or become evicted, or we are evicting you. But I want that teaming effect with the city to do this. Without the $25 fee, there's no bite, but without the accountability, and somehow we have to get that written in here, that there is an accountability to it, I don't think we can sell this to the other landlords out there.
I don't have a problem with putting in the ordinance that we will have a reporting mechanism twice a year, complete disclosures of, complete disclosures of all revenues and all costs, up to the program, I think we can write that in the ordinance, no matter who's mayor, they should have to produce that. I give you my word that it'll be there. But I think the program has valid. I mean, I supported this program from the beginning, and I think we need to get it off the ground when everything has been, so fulfilled. But I just think we can write it in the language there yet that says we have a responsibility to show the receipts and also the expenditures, what this program is costing. And I think that is something we can write in there and make it very meaningful.
Then, based upon that feedback, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to again send those ideas back to the city lawyer and have him draft a proposed assignment of fees paragraph that does exactly like that. That says that the committee meets twice a year and provides statistics from the police department regarding how the reporting or how the
Calls for service.
Yeah, the calls for service have been, as well as an accounting of the fees received and the expenses incurred, and make sure that they offset. Because, and I just want to go on the record and say that I don't want this to be a fundraiser for the city. I want this to be the crime-free housing program that everybody's feet are held to the fire for, about everything. This is incredibly important.
I don't disagree with you at all, and I think if we, and you understand what I'm saying, if we get it started, I think the commitment, the police chief and I had a good long talk this week. Whatever the date is that this thing hypothetically passes and moves forward, we're prepared to get an officer immediately on board, and the staff that Bob's talked about internally. And we know there'll be some ancillary things that's going to take in that, but get it going. And as soon as we see what the revenues really, we know what we can project, but you know what it is, until you get them, until they come in, until you see what's what. If they come in like, they should, we may agree very quickly, or by the first meeting, that we're ready to hire that second officer right away, and that the revenues will be what we think they were going to be. I can't say we're going to hire 2 officers and find out somehow that it's $75,000 first year for a new officer. If you do 2 right off the bat, you got 150. Then we look at Bob's support staff and maybe a few other ancillary things that we haven't even thought of yet. For example, the hearing officer. But we could be way over the 200,000 hypothetically before we ever get started. And that was just a projection of what we think it's going to be right in that ballpark. So what we're saying is, and we can write this in there as well, that there's a commitment upon implementation that an officer will be hired immediately, and that additional staff that the director is requesting to make this implementation be meaningful and effective, that we would do that immediately. Within 6 months, we'll evaluate the resources, the revenues, and if it goes as well as we hope and what we think, then that second person can be hired, that second officer. And I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. I think
when you talk about hiring that first person, that's in addition to Sergeant Fulkerson and...
That's addition to, yes.
So
No, that's addition because we wholeheartedly understand that. Those 2 are not being pulled out. That's a commitment of the city that the chief and I are making now and pledge that has to stay. They had their hands full.
Very full. Yeah.
Period. But this will be an initial additional officer immediately upon starting implementation. And then after evaluation of the revenues, it's my hope and desire that we can hire a second one, which would really give the manpower to be effective and to pay attention. And really, I think going back to this young lady here who spoke, the purpose of this is to work with the landlords and to help educate people and work through and not just put Band-Aids, but try to solve, the more we can be, that's why eventually we can get to that second officer, the sooner the better, where we'd have actually 4 sworn officers in housing. I firmly believe we could do more serious problem solving to effectively really better handle and have better environmental answer things. Where neighbors are getting frustrated now with some of the problems, that some tenants and situations, some rentals that do, don't get me wrong, I know it's not only rentals that we have problems in the community. We have plenty of owner occupied to cause problems, but I think we all admit and we all know some of the rental complexes, and that's why we're here, over time, that they haven't put in the effort that some of the landlords have, can get out of hand and have. But with more attention, more resources, more manpower, and this program in place, we should be able to bring some of those situations into a much more controlled environment where people don't feel so aggravated and so disillusioned about their neighborhoods and give up hope on, you know, what's happening. Because there are a lot of calls for service in some of these areas, and that's what we should be able to track and should be able to see the numbers hopefully reduce. The other thing that's going forward right now, and I didn't ask today, but I think St. Clair County passed it last night, we're in a process right now, we've been working on it for at least 2 years, but we're closer to getting that new data system for the police department, and that will be shared with housing. That is long, long overdue, but it took time. The chief didn't like the first one that they were looking at that I was ready to give authorization 2 years ago to buy, and then he put it next to it, and it's a good thing he did because they found out more glitches with it. But I think we got a system there that's going to have some capabilities of tracking more details than what we've ever had before. So that'll also be a big help to monitoring and giving the reports we need for some of the statistics you're trying to gather and measure. And it's like anything, any good program, you've got to have a measuring stick.
I'd like to also mention that this new software will work on our existing machines, so we don't have to go out and buy all new computers, because that would be outrageous. It's supposed to be very good.
And even if we had 4 or 6 dedicated officers, the idea of crime-free housing, and I don't, and not to be disrespectful, but some of the higher ups in the police department really don't understand this shit. Every officer on the beat is a crime-free officer. They are to think about what is it that I can do right now, not what needs to be called down for the next morning or the next business day to be dealt with. And when I talked to all the crime-free housing officers that handle the rest of the towns, they said, unless that police department, unless those officers are trained so well to where, you know, the work's half done by the time Sergeant Fulkerson gets it, then you know, it's almost like that officer that responds at 2 a.m. already is acting on behalf of crime-free, as if the whole office is right there dealing with the problem now. So that's going to be a big thing that I know is, you know.
And I think the whole thing, going back to this lady here who spoke, what I think you're going to find out, and you may have been blessed where you have not had situations up till now where tenants have given you, they created a nightmare. But I think the communications and the sharing of information from the police department to housing to the landlords is going to be greater than we've ever seen it. And that will make your jobs easier, and that partnership, that collaboration will because when people who are stirring the pot, causing problems, when they finally figure out in life that all the players are on the same page, when they can kind of push things from one to another, it's always easy to, you know, keep that ball going, you know? But when they figure out we're all on the same page and we're all sharing information and we're all about looking for the same, you know, solution, it wears them out. Right now they're wearing out some of us. And that's what, you know, some of the characters who do cause a lot of friction, they get in that mode where they, you know, wear everybody down. And I think so the communication is going to be a big thing, I think, landlords, that reporting, that talking to each other is going to make a big difference. And if we can have a couple extra officers in there, it'll give us the time to be able to really zero in on not coming in and just put a Band-Aid on the call, but to work on trying to have a dialogue and solve the true problems. Get to the core of it.
I have a 16 family right now that we got the 2 tenants to move, luckily, and I'm keeping 14 good tenants, or else I would have it reversed. And
well, that's what happens in neighborhoods.
that need to have it, so.
You can get one household or one unit that can just disrupt a whole neighborhood. And it's amazing. You get that one situation cleared up or get it under control, and it's amazing. People will say, well, we've got our neighborhood back. And we see it quite often, unfortunately.
I'd like to address what Mr. Mason just mentioned in passing, is that we've come to a fee of $25. I'd like to mention that previously, before our organization met, we were talking $50.
People
and
are being charged that.
$100 for the
Right.
license and all this kind of stuff. And so although people say $25 seems like a lot, $25 is less than most communities, and I think it ties with the other community, the lowest ranked community that charges. So, I know it seems as if we're not reaching a consensus for the amount. In truth, we started out at $50 and $100, and we cut it down to just the $25 fee. So there has been some movement on that. It's just we've agreed with that.
And getting back to what John said, and I agree with you, we're not trying to make this a moneymaker. I just want to make sure if we implement the program as being the, the guy who can catch the most heck or got to look at the budget more often than anybody, I just want to make sure that we're not starting something that's going to become a drain that we didn't think about. But I think with the $25 fee, based on the math and the figures we've looked at, I think we can produce what we're talking about as far as new hires and some things. I think we got to walk here a little bit. But I think it's all reasonable, and we're not seeing big profit built in here. We're seeing reality, what it'll take to make this job, to make this program implemented in a fair, reasonable manner.
Yes, and that's where we got to the $25. And then, like I said, the only thing that we had beyond that was, as you are a steward of the monies of the city, we want some accountability to the landlords, because the landlord's going to bear this cost, and we need something in good faith from them that is written in here where we can hold others accountable.
We'll write that in there, and like I said, we'll gladly share all the details as to what it costs. The chief and I talked today. I think it's very clear. If we end up eventually, now as we get going here, hiring 2 officers, we're going to have to pick up another police car at least. Okay, we can start this program right away. We have spares we can use, but as the funding comes, and maybe by the second year, the next year's budget, we can budget for another police car. I mean, those are things that the program will create additional costs, because if we didn't have a couple extra officers with the purpose of having a vehicle at their fingertips all the time, we wouldn't have to buy that. But I'm just saying, we're going to be cooperative. It's not that we're going to say right off the bat, well, we're not going to even get started until we have this much revenue. We're willing. We talked about how we can get this thing on our end get going. But yet, realistically, there's going to be some costs over time that are going to occur to make this thing run efficiently. But we'll give you a complete breakdown. I don't think that that's the case. We're not hiding. There's nothing to be hidden here.
Very good. I'm happy.
Mayor, we had talked about the possibility of having a public hearing on our proposal, and we pulled. What date did we pull out? Was it Tuesday the 12th?
Yeah, we looked at that, and I tell you, I just said, because when I originally formed the committee and we made some statements after that first meeting, we had said that we would form the committee, and then before it came back to council, we would hold another public hearing. I mean, all the meetings have been public, all of them been open, everybody's had a chance to speak along the way. But I think in fairness to what we said and what I said, we need to hold one more public meeting. Now, just to repeat again, I'm not dictating the time on this. I know, I think after all your hard work, I'm not trying to stall it. I'm not trying to accelerate it. Somebody accused me the other day of trying to accelerate it before the election. I just want to see, when you're ready, we'll cooperate. I believe to make a public hearing, by law, we have to give 15 days public notice. I think because we said it, we need to do it. I think we've had many public meetings. They've all been open, they've all been advertised, and people have come freely and spoken at all of them, and there's been nothing hidden. But I think we should hold one more public hearing officially when we get the final touched up draft. That's, and at that time, when we post the public hearing, we should put it on the website. We should, after we make these final changes tonight or whatever. So you guys can tell me the timeline. I just said somewhere about, the 20th, I think, was the date I proposed.
Okay.
I think it was is that a Wednesday, the 20th? Is that a
The
Wednesday?
19th is Tuesday. Oh, yeah. You went with Wednesday.
Wednesday the 20th was just the day I looked at today in my office.
We needed 15 days notice.
Yeah, we got to give 15 days notice, and we got to get this back to the attorney the next day or so to tweak a few last minute things. Now, if you come to some other glitches here tonight, that doesn't mean anything that day. I just tossed that out as possibly Wednesday the 20th as a public hearing, and then the first meeting of April, hypothetically, it could come back to City Council for a vote. And that's just a thought. When you came to me today and we looked at the calendar, That's a thought. That's nothing that I'm pushing, it's nothing that I'm mandating, it's just a thought.
March or April.
March 20th would be a possible public hearing,
Would be a Wednesday.
a Wednesday, and then if that would go well, then from there it could go to the council on the first is of Monday, the first Monday I think is the first.
What I'd like to do is I'd like time to get back with the attorney and get back to this committee. Can we squeeze in a meeting before the 20th? Is that possible?
Well, we have the regularly scheduled meeting for the crime-free housing that's recurring on Thursday the 14th.
Thursday the 14th, okay.
That's what I have on my calendar as the standard recurring.
Is that
appointment.
still doable by most people?
I'm fine with that. One thing is before the weather gets too warm, we kind of want to have something hopefully going. That's when it gets to be busy.
I don't disagree, that's, once again, I gotta be careful if I say, I look at a timeline, somebody says, well, I'm doing it for personal reasons, and that's not the case. You guys can, you can drive this bus. I tend to agree with you. The springtime, it'll be something that I think because hypothetically, if you get it passed by April 1, Bob and I talked today, other than, getting some forms and some things going, it's not impossible that May 1st, it's not impossible that the new fiscal year, it could start. I think, now, if you get much past April 1st and approving it, I think it becomes difficult to starting it, or getting the ball rolling by May 1st. But I think as much as we've been all working together on it, it's possible still to get this thing implemented, if that's what your desires are and that's what works out. Once again, I'm not dictating that by any means.
How many people can make the 14th? What time is that? You got is that 6:30 also?
What day is that?
6:30 is a Thursday.
Thursday.
That would be the sense that I can.
Are we saying 6:30?
Yes.
6:30.
Are you talking March 20?
March
20th.
March 14th.
That's for our committee to get
Oh, for
together.
the committee, okay, the 20th.
To go over these changes that we're talking about for tonight.
And then if we want to, we can go ahead and set a public hearing for the 20th. But, that we could cancel it if we had to. If we got on the 14th, we ran into trouble.
If you think tonight you're close enough with these proposed changes, and I can tell you, the proposed changes I've heard so far tonight, I don't think administratively, we don't have any part in it. I think we just need to have them rewritten in there in such a way that they're incorporated as you're wishing, and I think we get to draft back to all of you and let you look at it. I haven't heard anything so far that I think is a deal breaker here or a stop in the whole show. I don't think that's the case. But unless something else comes up that I haven't heard yet, or you heard.
I would love to do that with the March 20th order.
Okay. I did have some discussion with the mayor about how we want to proceed with that. How do you want to present this to the council? I mean, we have to give it to them ahead of time so they can read it. Do you want the committee to come and answer questions before the council, if they have any?
I would like that opportunity.
Yes.
I mean, we have worked hard and long on this. For us not be able to stand there and answer the questions is not.
Well, and what I would ask, in fairness to, I would ask that the full council, I will ask the full council to be probably present at the public hearing. And that would be the night to ask you all, the committee, to present your document, your ordinance first, and then we'll open it up for public comment. But I would think the appropriate thing to do would be at that public hearing, ask the task force to present on the 20th your final recommendation.
Well, I would recommend we get it to the council members before.
Oh, yes, I know that, but I think,
Okay.
but have them come verbally and talk about it, explain it, answer questions to the council, and then it's opened up to the public for discussion. And I think that would be truly a good public hearing, and I will ask the council to certainly be in attendance, and we'll create it, treat it just like a special council meeting, but it'll be a public hearing for this sole purpose. That's the way I envision it. And I think that would give you all a chance to address the full council and explain your work and what your findings.
And you're looking for that to be at 6:30 or 7? We usually have council.
I would say it's 7 to make it consistent with official public meetings.
Everybody else can make that. I won't be able to be,
I'm going to be out of town on the 20th.
I haven't done a meeting with Thursday.
Pardon?
I have another meeting the third Wednesday of every month.
Wow.
That's 3 of us, 3 of us.
And March 27th was the second meeting normally scheduled every month for
Yeah.
Crime Free, the Crime Free Housing Task Force.
We did the
I
second
don't know
before.
if we wait that long, but that's the standard.
Well, March 27th is scheduled to be a special finance meeting here in the council chambers that night. Now, that's at 7 o'clock. I
Yeah.
don't know if you want to, we don't want to, that could be a long one, because that's the final, that's because to get the budget voted on in April, that's the special finance. Jamie just asked me, and she just sent that, I think sent that memo, it's going out tomorrow.
All right. Are most people able to make it the 14th, though?
I am.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's probably more important than the presentation one. I'd like to stick with the 20th, even though some.
What about, is the 21st any better for anybody? There's nothing on the council chambers that night.
John, are you still out of town?
I'll be gone all that.
You'll be gone all that week. Are you around 21st?
I will be around the 20th and the 21st, yes, sir.
Oh, now we're down to, we're missing 1 instead of 3. No offense.
No,
but
I'm fine.
Yeah, maybe we should try the 21st then.
Dean, that's good for you, that 21st?
I got a neighborhood watch meeting that I'll have to
Okay.
get out of, but
I think I have one question.
I would probably recommend that they be here anyway, so.
Yeah.
if they would watch me, yeah, I'm here. You know.
Okay, Wednesday, the 21st, 7 o'clock?
Thursday.
Thursday is 21st.
Did that?
And Mr. Consilla, will you please in the morning remind my assistant that,
Yes.
so in case I get seen out for these, I'll type it in, but just do that, okay?
That's at 6:30 or 6 o'clock?
6, that's at 7. Thursday,
It's
the
a special
21st
meeting, so.
is 7.
That's the perfect.
And we'll have to have that posted ahead of time.
That has to go out 15 days before the 21st.
And should something happen on the 14th that we don't come to a conclusion, we can cancel.
But that way we're prepared.
Good, good. Now, does anyone else have anything that they'd like to discuss, that, any changes that?
Well, the two letters that we received from Scribner had some significant points in there that I think we need to just look at and address.
Okay. We have letters from Sergeant Shriver, National Center on Poverty, and they
Sergeant
both-
Schreiber or Scribner? Oh, it is Sergeant
Schreiber.
Schreiber, okay.
Yeah. They are in opposition to crime-free housing. They contend that it is, well, one of the contentions is that it's violating people's rights. Have you had a chance to read through these?
I don't think they were necessarily opposed to it.
I would say that their concern is that it presented the potential to violate rights. It doesn't say that it violates rights, but it presents the potential for violence, to violate rights, specifically as it relates to whether it's abuse, sexual violence, domestic violence, stuff like that. Whereas we would, because of the ordinance, if there's an incident where one of the people caused violence to another occupant of the house, that we would have to evict everybody, and I don't believe that that's the way the ordinance is written. I believe it allows us the opportunity to remove the one. Of course, there's lots of issues in how that would go through. We'd have to proceed carefully with that, even without this crime-free ordinance. As a lawyer, or as a landlord, I couldn't imagine going into that without the assistance of a lawyer, regardless, just because you would be violating a victim of violence rights and doing that stuff. So I understand their concerns. I don't see where our ordinance makes it any easier or more or less likely that that would occur to balance in the house.
And I spoke with Captain Gaggage today from, you know, that he's talked about, that's been there since I think 2006, or 2008. They've been, and it's been an aggressive program. And I asked him how many issues, you know, citing these concerns. He said, we've had people come in and do audits and review us, we've had no problems. We've never had any issues where there's been, you know, and so it's gotta be done right, it's gotta be done fair. It's not meant to target. So.
It is meant to target the
Well,
person who
target-
causes the violence, yes.
Right, no, it's not
Exactly.
target, right. But I mean, just so you know, and,
Not innocent
so.
victims, no.
Well,
We are
I
having
think
trouble with it.
we already are very much aware of victims' rights, as you said. Anybody else have any comment? Okay. Is there any other verbiage in here that you have a question about?
That's one thing, Ken,
Yes.
I think you were in chief play this week. He just does not want to have the city do the background checks.
Oh, yes, that's right.
He just feels staff-wise, that's an impossibility. Looking at the already strain on staff, office staff, et cetera, that he just thinks that's going to be an impossible task. So, you know, I think you pointed out, Kevin, that there are means right now that you can get online and check these things.
I mean, just speaking of, not to single out my dad, but, you know, doesn't want to use a computer
I don't think.
and,
Well, I think
yeah.
we would try to, we still continue to talk and look at some possibilities.
yeah.
But I just know the chief made it very clear that that was the only, in fact, when I asked him to, when we got the draft days ago, a week or so, and we gave it to chief, he happened to come up to my office and I handed him and said, here, this was, you know, my copy, I'm supposed to give you a copy, et cetera, please look it over. And when we talked, he said the only thing he had any heartburn with is he said he just doesn't believe his department can take that on. That was the biggest thing. And you had maybe a couple little things. But
Yeah, no, that was the main one. And,
And of course, we talk staffing with him. I mean,
Yeah.
that naturally you need more staff.
and you guys address this with, the mayor or his appointee shall have the power to administer oaths and require the attendance of any city employees, basically the hearing officer.
yeah,
You know,
that's
who's gonna run it, and you guys address that, the potential to have a hearing officer.
I think that'd be the best way to do it.
As far as a quick background check, I kind of thought that it was pretty, if you go into the front, like it says in a couple minutes, I'll shoot you out this, let me make sure it's you, you pay $15. I didn't think it was an involved process to have to do. I don't think it's gonna be overutilized, I think it's just gonna be for those applicants, those landlords that don't have any other resource that we know this is gonna be used.
Well, we're gonna ask around, and I think part of it was too, if we, I know what you're saying, but his thought was too, we had a brief conversation, city attorney wasn't even present. But if it is done relatively, you know, like you said, quick and easy type thing, and then if something isn't caught right, and then all of a sudden, you know, the city's not providing this check, you know, I think there are some other private, ways that somebody is not a computer, but I think if you are computer literate, or their firm is, or whether they're a small owner, they're selling 2 or 3 apartments, whatever, the information is pretty readily public available now that they can probably do a pretty thorough job to find something out. We're gonna see if we can ask and find out other sources that they might want to contact. He just felt pretty strong that he didn't want to take that on at the police department level. I haven't talked to Mr. Flynn yet. I don't know that the city's gonna want to get and be the middleman there to do the background checks. I think from a liability standpoint too, we probably want to just take a step back from that.
And I'm gonna be fine, as long as we have a couple of local.
Well, and
easy
that's what I think we're gonna try to find out who else, and if you find some, share at the next meeting, that we can, you know, leave the information there, that these are some possible sources that you might turn to if you don't choose to do it. But I think the whole part of this is that we're just saying people need to do them, it's for their protection, and if somebody's gonna do them not as thorough as the next person, it's gonna be their, you know, their responsibility, and what the affidavit is gonna say is that they did, to the best of their ability, they performed these. You know, that's what they're gonna be signing off on, you know, and I think, because they, too often, some of them don't look at anything, any details. And that's been harmful. To even them.
I'd like to make a comment too. I've had people say it sounds like we're anti-renter. What we actually are is we're pro-renter. If there's anybody that's going to get meat and potatoes out of this, anybody who's going to benefit from this the most will be that reliable renter that you have that has to share the building with somebody who's not reliable. And we're looking to make this improve our housing stock. We're looking for it to improve things for the other renters. And when people say, well, they're minorities, well, they need and they deserve to have good neighbors. So it is for the benefit, sure, of the entire society, but especially the other renters who live nearby or homeowners who live nearby. But it is not anti-renter. It's far from it. And it's not anti-landlord. It's pro-landlord. And I guess I'm on my soapbox.
Well, and just with the rental instance forms, it is so nice to be able to go to my apartment in the morning and knock on the door and say, we need to talk about this. And it's been downloaded off my computer. It tells exactly what happened, what officer, what time. And I can then talk with my contacts through crime-free housing to see what we're going to do about it. And the tenant is so surprised I would know something that happened at 2 a.m. And, oh wow, you're here to deal with this now. Yeah, because after that I got a call from apartment A and apartment D. And I need to tell them that this is being dealt with. This is only going to happen once. And that's how you can keep good renters and pay the bills. So I agree with you. I think this is a big step to ensuring.
Good. And if there's no other comments from the committee, we'll ask for the audience if they have comments.
Can you review exactly everything we discussed? I mean, I know the changes that were sent back to the attorney.
Okay, that's basically what we discussed. We're going to send back to the attorney the portion about the, I'll do that.
That the attorney provides the wording necessary to accommodate the appointment of a hearing officer to adjudicate any issues that arise or any problems that arise.
Okay, I was trying to specifically reference that section that he cut out, and that's such a
Three days.
So that's exactly what we're doing, is we're checking by hearing officer. Going to talk to him that we want to keep the December 2017 date in. And we're going to add that in the twice a year when the meeting is held of the committee, that they would have financial reports and statistics up to that time so that they can measure whether it's successful or not and make recommendations. Okay.
And then, just for the record, meetings.
We're going to have a meeting on Thursday, the 14th at 6:30. That's here, and Thursday, the 21st at 7 will be the presentation to the council, providing we get everything worked out
With a public hearing.
Yes, public hearing. Yes, presentation to the council with public hearing. Very good. Now, does anybody out there want to comment? Yes.
Yeah, let's see, first thing, can we make sure that we get the latest draft online? After every change?
It will be.
Okay, first thing.
It probably won't be till early next week, but it'll be on.
All right, second thing, I think what I heard is right. I think it's a great idea that all the policemen in the city are going to be crime-free housing. Well, I think maybe they ought to take the course too.
They do need to have extensive training.
Yeah, there has to be some training in this. And I'll tell you why. Last week, an older black gentleman spent 4 nights in jail over an occupancy violation that was dismissed in June. He's disabled, can't hardly walk, even has a hard time speaking. And that's the kind of people that government needs to protect. and there's been more than one person that has gone to jail over something as silly as being at someone's house without permission of the city. Keep that in mind, okay? The mayor was talking about liability, and not having liability with background checks. Well, I don't think I'd want some of the liability involved with passing information to the city that could lead to identity theft. Is there a possibility of getting a whole harmless agreement between the city and the landlord so that any information that the landlord is forced to give to the city, like name, birthday, other information, copies of the lease, that if the identity is stolen, we can be kept out of the lawsuit?
Is there, I would assume,
There's a
it would be
policy
legal to
right,
put the Privacy Act statement on it.
there's a policy right now. I'm not sure what tickets you got and how you received them or who gave it to you. And if it came from a city employee and they had that information you claimed, that's a violation of our standard operating procedure.
Information down at the housing office or before.
Well, I can guarantee you that will be addressed because we have orders, and Mr. Sable and I just whispered and talked about it. They are not allowed to put out personal information. And that's why sometimes the FOIA requests and different things take time because we have to go in there, look at it, we have to white it out or darken it out or whatever you want to call it to make sure that we're not sharing information that's not appropriate. So I can tell you the policy from the mayor's office has been in place for a number of years about the importance of being very careful and cautious not to let go any personal identity information. I can tell you that it will be, that memo will be sent out again in the next couple of days to remind them again, and Mr. Sable will talk to the housing
Okay,
staff.
but in this atmosphere that we have with lawyers, everybody wants to sue everybody for every little thing under the sun, disseminating information to a third party, you run into problems in business. I just thought the whole harmless agreement, I think, would be appropriate in this circumstance. Also, you talk about how you guys want to educate the landlord. Well, the education in this country has a lot to be desired. And when we have 8th and 9th graders that can't read and write, keep that in mind too.
And it'll be reciprocal. So if you've taken crime-free housing somewhere else, you won't have to sit through it.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about this. We hear all this great stuff all the time about, this isn't going to affect you. This is what we're doing here is less than what other places are doing, or we're not. Like this last week when the occupancy ordinance was updated, it's less than what was required, before, and it's not. Just keep in mind, we're businessmen. I don't have problems in my rental property. I watch it, and I don't want problems there. And it would really make more sense if you targeted the ones that are causing the problems. I mean, it's just like gun control.
And we're going to be able to do that.
Millions of people that are law-abiding citizens, and there's a percentage of 1% that are criminals. And man, it seems like a lot of work to go after the law-abiding citizens, and not the guys that are really doing the problem.
Mr. Brown, I think that the intent and the direction of this ordinance is such that those who are good landlords will continue to be good landlords, and it's not going to be that much of an imposition on them. Those who are not good landlords, there will be an imposition on them. And this gives that teeth and that bite to do that. Until, without this, I don't think we have as much of a bite.
How about the exception on the family members that are discovered in a house? Do you think that's wise?
I would like to see how that plays out.
Because the problem would be, when we start making exceptions to the rules, somebody's going to say, well, then you're targeting us and not letting everybody in. I can tell you how the IRS treats this stuff. You have a family member that's living in one of your rentals, and he doesn't pay any rent. Guess what? We gotta show his income. If we're not getting a dime. That's how it works with the IRS. You know, because you can't give special favors even if you loan your family members money. You get taxed, if you say, oh gee, honey, you're not gonna pay back, you don't have to pay me any interest on that. Guarantee you. You better report it, and you better, you know, show interest on it, because that's taxable income.
We're getting a little far afield here.
Well, what I'm saying is that, you know, allowing people
And I think it's
to
6
skip
months.
the
we need
ordinance
to see
because
what
of
the
family
change
members.
was.
Yeah, they will be meeting again to reevaluate things, and we'll look at it at that time.
Yes.
There were some things that I heard you talking about that I don't believe are in this document. Like I said, just right here, I just now got the document, didn't know anything about it here. But it's not clear in here, it's clear from the discussion, that $25 that you're collecting is going to go to expand the police force. And I think they will be dedicated to the housing. Is that what we're saying here? So it's not in the document.
And that's why we asked it to go back to the lawyer to have him write that.
So I wanted to review it.
Yeah.
It was initially.
Okay, so also, what do those policemen do when there's no call? I mean,
They are-
the whole day.
They are very, I mean, if you've ever been, if you go into housing, go to the left, they will have computers going just to the voluntary landlords. And all the calls that went to those apartments, they are going through. It is,
It's busy.
it
Okay.
is extremely
So-
busy.
So I didn't even realize we had a crime problem in Belleville, and I live in Belleville.
We
so
have-
I
we
heard that
have,
last night at the meeting.
No.
So I don't mind spending the $25 for each property, to get something for it. So, and that sounds good. It's also not clear in here, to me, is it like exactly, I see how we're gonna run, you know, we'll get the information about whether they've been criminals before, what they've done. But say you have somebody who does something wrong, something illegal, the police come out, and somehow it comes to the fact that, gee, I need to evict this person, so I give them eviction notice and they don't go, which happens all the time, right? They just stay and they don't pay. Are the police, is something about this program going to help us with that situation? And if not, what are we really getting? Nothing that we don't already have. But, you know, you get these people in here and you say, okay, they're evicted. And they say, okay, we'll be out Saturday. Saturday they're not out, we'll be out Monday. How do you make them go out? You go through a 3-month court proceedings, you pay a bunch of lawyers, and so what
With
benefits?
crime-free housing, and you have your unit registered, and your unit, they have a drug deal, and they go to jail and they come back. They post their bail, they don't pay you rent, you know, now you got an eviction, plus you want to get rid of them anyway. With crime-free housing now, it's documented, and that's on the radar for the police to watch. And now you know about it. You may not even know that they went to jail, but now you do. Now you know why they missed their rent. It could be that there was a drug party, and you now realize there's 3 other people that are staying there, and they have criminal back. Maybe one has a warrant. Well, now all that's going to come to light. What we have found when I talk to all these other agencies that have crime-free, they really haven't had to force landlords to evict. Normally, by the time that the tenant knows that they're doing criminal things wrong, harboring someone with a warrant, drug parties, you know, that they normally want to move. They want to fly under the radar. They want to go somewhere where maybe there's not crime-free housing. That's been my experience being on the voluntary program, that the tenants that I would normally have to wait out through an eviction actually move, and a lot of times within a week. And it has saved me a lot of money.
So does that come along?
No, but you'll get the report that they were out there.
Okay.
If it was at your property.
Okay. All right, so what would be really valuable to me as a tenant, if you're going to go to all this trouble and have those databases and all that sort of thing, I have problems with people not paying the rent and not leaving. And so I discovered in these few years, 4 or 5 years, is that there are people that just go from one place to another, you know, they stay there, they pay the rent for a few months, and they stop paying, you can't make them go, they stay, and then they hop over to another place, and they do the same thing. I've had them come back to me, not realizing I'm the same person. If there could be a way for us to report in the same database that this is a skipper, you know.
And that could have issues, you know, creating a blacklist, or whatever you want to call it, because we're just dealing with crime here.
Well,
And
that's fine, that's stealing.
it is stealing, and we're dealing with, yeah, and I agree, it's very frustrating for me as well. As a landlord, when I'm doing an application, which doesn't relate to crime-free housing, I look for, when all these unknown addresses pop up and they can't explain it, that's when normally it's the landlords that they've skipped out on. So you're like, why is this tied into your name and your social security number? And there's normally at the bottom of the first sheet, you can pretty well figure that out.
Okay, so the other thing that doesn't say in here is, does it cost us to get this certification training? And so how much
No.
does it cost?
I think we decided there's no charge for the training.
Not from the city's point of view.
Right.
I don't, is there any place that does charge to attend their training?
No, in fact, a lot of the towns have said we can either use that, or the landlord association that runs programs will host it for free. So,
So, whoever has to pay the criminal checks, pay for that. What is that money for? $25 goes for the police?
please, that's up to you if you charge an application fee, like I charge $35. That covers $33 to do work, rental, criminal, sex offender, everything. So it's up to you if you want to charge an application fee.
So it's not going to
No.
the city?
That's
The
not-
only thing the city would be getting would be a $25 that would go towards the additional staffing that we want to bring forth here.
So when I do that criminal check, then are you saying I have to bring that back to the city?
No.
All you have to do is just basically you're signing when you, is that
Sign off
you've done.
that you acknowledge that you've done one.
There should be an affidavit form in that, put
Yes.
that there.
Yeah.
Is when you're signing, it says you did a background check on your respective
We
tenants.
we're not filing them, we're not looking, you know, that's your business.
So how do I file it?
When you send the tenant down with the lease, to get the occupancy permit, they would have to have that with them, that where you signed off on it saying that you checked, you did the background check on these folks, and here it is.
And when he said you file it, we would just put it in your personnel file, you know, for that particular building, that's all. You don't have to file it with us.
And it's none of our business who you choose to rent to. It just is us saying, please do a check so you know what's going to be dealing with or who we have, so.
And there would be education and training on which particular days you want that done from?
Right. We would need to provide a couple of options locally where you could send an applicant so it doesn't burn you and say, go to West Main at this address, they'll run one for $15, show it to me.
Just
That's
like
what
you
we're
can tell the lab, the respective tenant, go online, which is free credit
Exactly.
report.
Exactly.
And I'll charge you a fee. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?